Welcome to The Shallow End, a podcast about sports cards and sports card collecting. I'm Dave Schwartz, Iowa Dave Sports Cards on Instagram, and today you're in for a treat. We are talking to Kevin, who is Colorado Collector on Instagram. He was on last year, and about a month ago, Kevin did something awesome. He completed a 637 card master set of 1999 Topps and Topps Chrome baseball refractors. This was a 5-year odyssey to collect 462 base refractors plus every refractor of nearly 10 inserts in the set. You're going to hear how this started as a personal journey that evolved into something more. What Kevin accomplished with this set build, it really is a testament to his drive and patience. And I could not wait to have him on to talk about it. So let's cut the introductory chit-chat and hear how Kevin made this happen. All right, so let's welcome back to The Shallow End, Kevin at Colorado Collector on Instagram. Kevin, it is great to see you. How you been?
I've been good. Thanks for having me.
So you last month posted something on Instagram that blew my mind, blew a lot of people's mind. It was pretty incredible. So why don't we just sort of let you take the mic here and tell us what you accomplished in your collecting?
Sure. So when I got back into the hobby around COVID, like many people, I went back through my childhood cards. And one of the first things I came across, there's an autograph set from 1999 Topps, which was a set that I had collected with my family. My brother and my dad at the time just kind of caught up in, big baseball fans, caught up in kind of the excitement of, the home run chase from the year prior between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. And so this set had, some home run chase cards that we can talk about a little bit later. Long story short, we'd collect a lot of that as, when I was a kid. When I came across my collection, that was kind of the first, immediately sentimental thing that, my instinct was, hey, I want to pick up where I left off and pursue that a little bit and dive back into that set. One thing led to another. And, I had not collected or really owned much of the Chrome product as a kid. It was more premium and what have you. And so as I got into it and realized, it might be a fun pursuit to collect some of the refractors, and maybe I pursue the whole set. And it just sort of snowballed. And so between the Topps flagship product and the Topps Chrome product, the flagship product had some inserts that came in Chrome versions and also had refractor versions that were far more rare. And then the Topps Chrome product has 2 base refractors per box, or one in 12 packs. And then obviously its own array of insert sets with the refractors. And so I sort of set out to collect a master refractor set to include, it's 637 cards if you add them all up, but it includes 462 base cards. There's an asterisk there that I can get to in a second. And then I think there's 10. I'm looking at the list and I'm too lazy to count, but there's 10 insert sets. And so of that, 2 of those insert sets, one from Series 2 Topps Chrome and one from Series 1 Topps Chrome, are serial numbered to 100. And they include a lot of the big names, the Derek Jeters, Ken Griffey Jr.'s. So they go for some pretty big bucks. And so obviously when I first set out to do this, that sort of budget was not really in the near term cards and not really something I was focused on. But I kind of chipped away at the low hanging fruit and focused on collecting some of the commons. And I just had a really strict budget of, I'll just start buying every common I can find that's $1 or less. And so a lot of that was combing through ComC, Sport Card Lots, I think it's called, .com, some of the places where you can buy stuff in bulk and ship it in bulk, so that it's not, $1 on eBay, but then it's a couple bucks in shipping, and it just adds up when you're talking about that volume of cards. So just sort of incrementally worked my way up. And as I got more into it and got more excited about it and got more passionate about it, I started to take the opportunities when they presented themselves to pick up some of those bigger cards. And now it's probably been about a little over 5 years. And I just recently collected the final card to put a stamp on the whole thing. So it's pretty
So
fun, right?
it's amazing. So 1999 Topps and Topps Chrome, a master refractor set, 637 cards over 5 years.
Yes.
What was the last card?
So the last card, which I made a post about on my Instagram, which is what prompted this conversation, right? Which is ironically also the most expensive card in the whole run, is Ken Griffey Jr.'s Fortune 15 refractor. Yep. So you got it there, and I've got it here.
Amazing.
And so this, again, is a card it's not necessarily, there's only 100 copies. As I think everybody that would be listening to this probably understands, the Griffey market is its own sort of enigma. And there were opportunities at times, where things were available, but they were just exorbitant prices. And there was one copy that had sold at what I felt was a reasonable number, and it just happened so fast. I picked up on it late. And at that time, I just sort of resigned myself to, well, I'm not in a rush. Like someday when it's meant to be, I'll find, these cards, and I'll find them at the price that I'm comfortable with. And so, with time, that proved to be true. And obviously the market has done this with time, and with a card like that, again, it just comes down to patience. And I think in the current, card market, I think there's a lot of, it's like anything else in modern life where there's just a lot of pushing to purchase this or to chase that or to get this. And sometimes with a pursuit like this, like it's more fun to be patient, even though in the little increments, it's hard, right? Because you really want to do stuff. But to me, like the fun is the chase. And I find sometimes when it's over, it's kind of a letdown, which is not the case here, because it's just something that's really like sentimental to me. But I was just glad to be patient with it. And with time, just like an Instagram connection of mine that, buys big collections and goes through them and things like that. I just happened to be on Instagram when he posted that he had purchased an entire room worth of stuff. And, just showed a few pictures of what was in it, and this card was in it. And I immediately was like, hey, that's actually like a pretty big card I'm looking for. I would love to talk about it. And we, came to an agreement pretty quick, and I was really happy with it. And the fact that it was raw and not a PSA 10 that everybody's trying to maximize, like, I just really appreciated that he was just willing to move it to me at what was, a fair price for both of us. And that's how these things go. And that's the fun part too, right? Is those relationships lead to those things. And that's the fun part of it. So
I'm really struck by the patience part of it that you mentioned, that there was no rush for this. Were there ever moments where you got a little frustrated where you couldn't find something, or you were trying to target certain things, and they weren't popping up? Or talk a little bit more about the process.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were a couple times where like, and going back to where I started out, with my strict $1 per card limit, I think by the time I had scoured every possible listing of this set on the internet, and then some, maybe 6 times over, there was a point in time where I said, okay, I'm going to move my budget to $2 per card, and then eventually it became $3 per card. And I think I collected probably a solid 80% of the set, under $3 a card or something like that, which again, we're talking about the base set is 462 some odd cards. Like that adds up. There was probably 50 remaining cards in the base set that just either took me time to track down for whatever reason. And I'll get into a minute, like the last card of the base set took me forever to find a copy. And I still don't really understand why. And I still have the saved search, and it just rarely pops up. But I had to pay up a little bit more for the Ken Griffey Juniors, right? And the Derek Jeters and some of those things. And I got lucky along the way. I kind of blindly bought a very horribly listed lot of, Topps Chrome cards. And it was just a box, and I could see, and it was a mess. Like they were some of them were in screw down cases, which is always a pretty good clue, right? But it was just a mess of cards. And so I bought it, and it was like, I think I spent $40 on this box. And it showed up and they were all beat up, but there were a lot of things in screw down cases. And in that box, I probably ended up with like 25 refractors, and I'd say probably 15 of them were ones that I just happened to need. And one of them was Derek Jeter, which, you know, is like, you're going to spend 40 or 50 bucks at least for a copy of that card. And now it might be a little bit more, but that was like a big score. And the other thing that was in there was a 14-15 refractor, right? And it's like obscure listings like that. Just sometimes you just get lucky. And so I think, again, I just was kind of taking like the value approach to it, and it worked out great. So, but the final card, ironically, of like a absolute, in this case, like a very random name, that I kind of ponied up for. I paid $15 for it. And it's because it took me the better part of 3.5 years to track one down, was one Brian Hunter. And it's a very goofy image. Like, it stands out as like a bizarrely like comical image from the set. And I don't know if that's why it's more obscure. Like, you know, he's got a mask on and he's literally stealing bases is the joke. This just took forever. So I had all sorts of like 1999 Chrome 274, which is the card number in the set, like searches saved all over the place. And they just never came up. And when one finally came up, I'm like, instant bin. Anything under 50 bucks, like, screw it, I'm going for it. I think I paid 15 bucks for it. But so there were a few exceptions to the rule. But
yeah, I'm imagining what your saved searches must have looked like.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this was mostly done over eBay, ComC, some other places as well.
Yeah.
It kind of just goes to show what the power of eBay and ComC like really are. It sounds like a high percentage of it was done. What did it feel like, for lack of a better way of phrasing this question, when you got that last card on hand, when the Griffey came in? Because, you know, it's one thing to buy it, but then there's the anxiety of, please get here, right? And you're just checking the tracking, and it finally gets there, and you got it. What was that moment like for you?
I mean, it was great. Also, like, that's a huge card, right? Like, that's a card that I didn't really envision, independent of the whole set pursuit. That's a card I never really envisioned owning. And so just to like look at it, right, and put it in my hands, and like the irony is it's in incredible shape, right? And so then my mind goes to, well, shit, like, I'll sub it to PSA, and the rest of my set is graded. And if it gets a 10, I'll probably sell it and then just pursue buying a lower grade copy for my set, because there's a value play there, right? And that's kind of the nature of this hobby. Like, that gives me the opportunity to use that money to put something else towards my collection. And so at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter to me if it gems or not. If it does, great. There's an opportunity there to turn it into more, you know, cards for my collection. But it was just amazing. The other thing too about it is, I believe, if I understood the story correctly, the guy that found it, it was just not in a sleeve. Like, it was just loose, not in a sleeve or anything, which is crazy. And then it arrives and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is in like impeccable condition. Who knows what the story of this card is, or who owned it, or who had stored it. And so, you know, for it to kind of just end up now in my master set. And I know there have been other base refractor sets put together, because over the years I've seen at least one listed on eBay. There was somebody that they had complete 1996, 97, 98, 99, and 2000 base refractor sets that they had listed. I know there's other, you know, complete sets of the early Road to the Hall and the 14-15 sets, but I don't know if anybody else has kind of done the full scope. So, and whether I'm the first or not, I also like don't really care, but it was fun.
Are you? Is there a mix of graded and raw? Is it all raw? How do you want to store it?
So, my sets, my base sets, and the insert sets are largely in binders. So I've got a Series 1 binder and a Series 2 binder, because nostalgia, and there's really no need to do anything more. I've sort of thought about, you know, on Instagram, I get pushed all these things, and I've seen, you know, you can buy things for the wall where you can put your what do you call them, like the snap cases. And I'm like, what if I covered my wall and, you know, 462 cards, I put all my base cards of that, and just an entire basement wall, which my wife would immediately say no to, but like, what if the whole set was just on the wall? Like, wouldn't that be amazing? But at the end of the day, like the binder is just the most efficient way to store this stuff. So I just have the base set is almost entirely stored within the binder and the associated inserts from series 1 or from series 2. And then in the binder, there's some other stuff that aren't necessarily like chrome refractors. Some of the other 1999 inserts and stuff that I've pursued, like that autograph set that kind of spawned this whole thing. I pursued. That was the first thing I completed, was tracking down that set, and that, and it's kind of a funny set. It flies under the radar. It's maybe not the best design or best looking set ever, but it has some great names. And the cards from my childhood, I remember my dad and I pulled Moises Alou. And it's funny, when I started this, so my dad, when I was in probably late middle school, early high school, he's got the classic story where he went to college and his mom threw his cards out or whatever. And I think he had a bit of a midlife crisis or whatever you want to call it. And he got way back into collecting, sets from his childhood. So 1956 Topps and 1948 Topps, All-American Football, and all this stuff. And so as a kid, he was like up super late, and he's a night owl, but I would come home from school or I would come home from being out with my friends or whatever. And, 1 a.m, and he's like at the computer trying to like snipe stuff on eBay in 1998 or whatever. And I think his way of kind of passing that on or enjoying it with me and my brother was, hey, like there's this cool set that has the McGwire and the Sosa stuff. And we drove all over town. And, I kind of largely grew up in my later youth in the Bay Area. And we drove all over the Bay Area in California, buying boxes in 1999 Topps, just trying to like literally pull all of the McGwire and Sosa home run cards. And so when I started this whole thing, I texted him. I'm like, hey, like, I'm pretty sure you have this stuff stored away, like in the attic or whatever. And I'm pretty sure we had a Moises Alou autograph card. And rather than spending $11 for it or whatever on, ComC, would you send that to me? And he's like, sure. And the funniest part about it is, again, this is a guy that like, understands the hobby and all that stuff. And he is, at one point, he had a top 10 1956 Topps set in the PSA registry. Everything is like a 7 or an 8 and a couple of 9s or whatever. And now I think it's down in like the 40s or 50s, but like he gets it, right? And he just dropped this thing in a bubble envelope with no protection or anything. He just like sent it off. It's so funny when I got it. I'm like, that's amazing, man. That's classic. And it survived just fine. But the other one I had from my youth was Roger Clemens. And as a kid, I collected Tim Salmon, Jeff Bagwell, and Roger Clemens. And I had forgotten entirely that I owned this, of course, right? Like I'd kind of forgotten about everything. And I pulled it up and I just immediately remembered how excited I was when I was at a card show at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. And I saw this card and it was like, and I want to say it was like $50 or something. And it was like, I probably had $52 to my name and it was in my pocket. And I was like, I need this card. And I bought it. And it was like the prized, card in my Roger Clemens collection forever. So stuff like that, where it's like, in a way, all of this is so stupid, right? It's just like silly nostalgia and you spend all this money on it. But like, what is life for if it's not just enjoying this kind of stuff? And so when that came back, it was immediately like, yes, I have sort of, it was exciting to open it up. And it's like, I don't even know what's going on with modern cards. Like I've sort of, I don't want to say kept tabs on it, but I'd seen stuff over the years when I was in college or whatever and had a general set. I knew what like Mike Trout's rookie card looked like in 2011 Topps, and I generally knew the different products, but I had never really gone down that road. And so when I kind of went through my stuff again during COVID, I was like, I think truly seeking some inroads into it, right? To like have a purpose and not just be, so lost. And this was the easiest way to get back into it, where it's like familiarity stuff. And then that snowballed into recognizing I was only a year or two late. And by the time I figured this out, I was like just a few months late because several big cards had transacted. But I'm like, oh, in 2019, they did this throwback 1999 autograph set. And I'm like, it took me a while to just like really dive in. And by the time I did, I wish I had done it earlier, because I would have a lot of the superfractors and stuff. But like that, it's led to some of these other things that now it's, it was, 90s collecting, and now it's sort of transcended that into modern collecting. And that has been a really fun way to get into different stuff too.
Great. And I want to definitely come back to that. But before I lose one thread, you had mentioned the Sosa and the McGwire part of it all, and that you were in the Bay Area. And I mean, you had Bonds up there.
Yeah.
So what was it about Sosa and McGwire that was sort of so, romantic?
So these, so this is what the cards from the set look like. So what you've got there on the screen is the base set card number 70, which is aptly numbered to the number of home runs he hit in 1998. And so they put together, this is the home run record set. So this is card number 220 in the set. And there's 70 variations of this card with numbers 1 through 70 on the back. And what's cool about these cards is, so the production run, so, and I could back into the math, but let's say for all intents and purposes, there's 100 copies of every card in the set. There's 70 of these, right? And so you divide 100 by 70, which would lead to roughly, this is a bad example, let's say there's 700 copies of every card in the set, and there's 70 of these. So while there's 700 copies of every card in the set, there would be 100, 10 copies of each home run times 70 to get to 700. So the print run of the total home run cards equals the print run of any other card in the set. So in this case, it's divisible by 70, and with Sammy Sosa, it's divisible by 66. And so Series 1 had this home run record card, and Series 2 had, it's called Home Run Parade. And I'm looking over there because I've actually got uncut sheets of the base version of each, which is cool. I can put those on the screen in a sec. But my favorite part about these is on the back of each one, it has detail about where the home run was hit, how far it was hit, what the count was, who the pitcher was, what the situation was. And to me, like, that is just awesome. I don't know if I can get that to focus better.
That's pretty good.
Which is pretty cool. And then they actually repeated that in, I think it was 2002 tops. I'm trying to remember what year it was. Bonds hit 72 home runs or 73 home runs. And what's cool is they kind of repeated that concept where there's 73 home run cards for him. And my dad had season tickets to the Giants, and I went to a bunch of those games. And so I've looked at some of those, and I still have ticket stubs, and I've been able to like go back and be like, oh, I was at the game where he hit home run 54 or whatever it was. So that's been kind of cool too. But I love that concept that they did.
Yeah. What was the reaction that you got either from hobby friends you keep in touch with or over Instagram once the set was completed and it was up and displayed? What kind of feedback did you get?
Yeah, I mean, I got a ton of messages because I've got a bunch of, just a bunch of hobby friends over the years that have kind of followed what I was doing or helped, they knew what I was doing and they helped connect me with cards or sent me links to things. That's where it's like, it's fun to collect something, but it's even more fun to do it where you feel like people support you in doing it and they send you links. And I've always tried to do the same. Like whenever I see something and it jogs my memory of like, oh yeah, this guy collects this or this guy's looking for this, I always try to make the time to like send them it. Or, in some cases, like if I'm at a show and I'm like, hey, this is a card I'd be happy to own at this price, I'll buy it. And if the person wants it at that price or whatever, then it's all theirs. And if they don't, like it's no skin off my back, I'll keep it or whatever. Like that is the whole point of all, like the social aspect of it is the crux of it all for me. Ironically, like I hate stuff. Like I despise stuff, which my wife might think is funny because I do have a lot of stuff, but like I get anxiety with like so much stuff. And so I'm constantly like looking at my collection and being like, how can I make this less? How can I condense it or how can I reduce it or turn it over or whatever? And I know there's a lot of sort of like underlying industry pressure or sort of like it's the popular thing to do to like level up into big cards or whatever. But and it's not for that reason. Like I'm not, it's not my motive, right? But in a way, that's sort of what I do in part because I'm like, okay, I've enjoyed all this different stuff. And at some point I'm like, this is too much. And so then I go through and I try to cull a bunch of it. And then I'm like, well, this now gives me funds. Like this is not I'm not in the black. I'm certainly not making money doing this. And so I think that's the difference between kind of what like a lot of what you see on social media and like pushing to level up into cards is kind of like that flipping thing. I'm a horrible flipper. I'm like way too sentimental and like just into cards. And I'm just not the type of person to try to like make a buck off people. But the concept of sort of like building out a collection until it's just like overwhelming in a way, and then trying to find a way to condense it is sort of how I've approached it. And now I'm trying to, keep that growth more and more limited so that at some point it's just in a very manageable, tight space. This set is the big anomaly, obviously, because it's a lot of volume. But
you mentioned that you like, finding cards for people, letting them know, hey, I found this card, or picking it up, or letting them have it, or whatever. Did that happen at all with the set? Were you ever contacted by people saying, look, I found this?
Yeah. I'd have to think about the specific examples, but there's definitely been several occasions where either people have said, hey, like, I'm at a show, this is available, and they facilitated that. Or there have been a couple instances where they're like, hey, I picked this up. And I've actually had a couple people too that, earlier on when we're talking about lower value dollar cards, where I'll have a conversation and they're like, yeah, I have, Mariano Rivera or whatever. And they're like, who else do you need? And then they just send me a ton of stuff, right? And they're like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, that's amazing, and like that's the type of stuff that it feels so good when somebody does that, but then also it almost makes me feel like I'm trapped in a world of guilt until I pass that on or return the favor. So I actually get a lot of joy out of trying to like facilitate things for other people. And then when it happens to me again, like I'm not seeking that and I don't expect that, but it's just again, that's kind of what makes it fun. I think that's true just like about life in general, right? But
so what are some other areas of your PC, you started to touch on this before, that sort of like grew out of the search for the 99 refractors? Yeah. What's part of that family tree?
So another one of the cards that my brother actually pulled in our youth, and he still had it. And he was a big Nolan Ryan collector as a kid. And I think a couple years back, early on when I started this journey, I had bought a bunch of like 90s boxes and stuff, and I pulled a pretty nice Nolan Ryan autograph, which was cool. And so I traded it to him for this card that we pulled as a kid. But so this is a MVP parallel, sweepstakes parallel. And so these were seeded into packs. And it's got a print run on the back stated as 100 copies per player. So it's a pretty rare print run. And as you can tell on the front, like if I have, here's an autograph version, but like this is what a base card looks like, obviously without the stamp on the autograph. And so the only difference here is that MVP promotion stamp. And on the back, it has like a sweepstakes thing. And I've pulled a couple of these, even more recently. And they really do, like the packs stick together. You really have to be paying attention to like what you're doing in a lot of cases to like notice them. So it makes you wonder how many of those were even discovered, even if they were pulled. But B, the way that the program worked is you would pull these cards and then Topps every week of the year. And there were 25 weeks, 25 winners. They would identify like their MVP of the week. And if you owned the redemption card of that MVP of the week, you could send it in. And at the end of the year, you would get a 25 card set of these foil based. So this is the Tim Salmon sweepstakes card. And he won MVP of the week. So this very card, an unknown number of people submitted to Topps. They were destroyed. And in return, they got a 25 card set, including all of the winners, right? And this is what Tim Salmon's sort of MVP redeemed or redemption card looks like. So this was the week ending April 18th, 1999. And on the back, it tells you what he did that week to earn the honors. So it says he needed only 2 games to amass 11 of his 12 RBI this week. He went 4 for 5 with 2 doubles and 5 ribbies in a 13-5 rout of Texas on April 12th. 3 days later, he blasted 2 home runs and drove in 6 runs in a 12-1 victory at Oakland. He also had 3 hits against Seattle on the 16th. So again, it's just like nerd shit, right? But like, I love this. And so there's 25 of these. And so the other pursuit for me has been trying to track down because again, Tim Salmon, right? Like he was a winner. Presumably a bunch of these were submitted to Topps and destroyed. Who knows how many were even noticed in packs. So it's pretty limited to find the winners. And so I've been trying to track down a complete set of just the winners specifically. And so there's 25. I'm up to 15, but they're tough. And I've identified there's a guy that I interact with on Instagram, and he put me in touch with somebody that, you know, was an older gentleman out of like Pittsburgh or something, and a longtime collector. And I think he at one point had a complete set of the MVP redemptions, which is crazy. And so he and I have interacted over email a few times, and I forget what his like job is, but he's like a long road trucker or something like that, and he travels for weeks on end. And so he's very like inconsistent to be in touch with via email, and just kind of the way he writes, you can kind of tell he's like an older gentleman, maybe in like his 70s or something like that. And I have bought a couple off of him. I bought Barry Bonds, which is just a really tough one to find. And isn't even a winner, mind you, but again, that's a whole, you know, different level of collecting, of Barry Bonds collectors and stuff. I bought a couple of the other winners, and I often revisit sort of like this list in my email from 3 years ago where I know what other winners he has, and I know the asking prices, and I'm kind of like, like I sort of trust they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And again, it's one of those things where I'm like, well, I'm kind of being patient and see if I can pick these things up at a show, or one pops up on eBay or whatever. And I'm just kind of scouring for things. And there've been a few that I've been able to pick up, but it's getting harder. And I'm down to, 10 more of them. And some of them are, big name players like McGwire, and a McGwire like sold via Buy It Now for $40 or something a couple months back. And I probably missed it by like an hour. And I was like, duh, that's going to be a tough one. And like Piazza. And then you've got, there's a couple other guys that are, kind of no names. Right. And I'm just sort of hoping that I'll stumble upon those. But again, I'm not in a mega rush. I don't know that there's anybody else really pursuing this hyper obscure niche thing that I'm pursuing. So I'm happy to just be patient.
Again, coming back to the idea of patience with the 99 set, was there ever a sense like with the rest of your PC that in a sense that your 99 search for all those refractors was almost like the home base or like the anchor of all that you were trying to do? Like no matter what was going on with your other cards, the other players you collect, there was always this root of it all.
Absolutely. And like even to this day, I mean, again, I think back to like what I was doing when I first got back into this, and now, collecting is a slippery slope. I'm sure everybody listening can relate to that, right? Where it's like, it's a fine line of how much is too much, sticking to a budget. It's ironic because there's a part of me too that's horrible at sticking to a budget and horrible at being patient and being disciplined. And so it's sort of a constant test. And I sort of view collecting as like a respite for me, right? Like I've got a great career. I've got a great family. I've got kids. I'm social. I have an amazing life, but it's noisy and it's a lot. And like collecting is kind of my way of turning my brain off and just sort of enjoying something mindlessly in a way. It's also dangerous, right? Where then it becomes, and again, COVID, I think kind of scratched at this, right? Where it's like all of a sudden everybody had nothing but time on their hands and you're just like on your phone and you're on eBay. And like that just kind of leads itself to, I'm a horrible window shopper. I'm like, ooh, I love the look of that. I love the look of that. And like, I love baseball. I love like art. I love design. I love all that stuff. And baseball cards are just like a really fun way to enjoy that stuff. One of my more recent endeavors, again, much to my wife's chagrin, is like I've been picking up cool uncut sheets where I can find them, obscure uncut sheets. Because and a lot of people, right? Like it's people buy those things and they cut them up and whatever. I've been framing them, right? And it's like, here's like this fabulous 40s extra set, and we don't need to get into all the details of this, but it's a very obscure thing, right? And I'm like, and I actually had to cut that sheet down a little bit to frame it reasonably, and it's almost like blasphemy, right? It's like, how could you do such a thing? But I'm like, well, I'm actually preserving it in a way to display it and enjoy it. And the same is true. And I'll grab these real quick. But the same is true. So I have the Sosa sheet as well, but like this is that uncut sheet of McGwire cards that I was talking about. And I trimmed this down because it had this whole thing on the top that was like this cheesy, like Mark McGwire sort of headline thing, which makes me wonder if they made these at some point in some promotional form. And it had a little white space at the bottom. And I said, you know what, these will look really good as a pair, in sort of a square shape. And so I said, the other night, these frames came and I said, screw it, taking a box cutter to this and just making a clean line. And there was a little bit of guilt in doing that, but now they're framed and I have no intent of ever doing anything with them other than putting them on my wall to enjoy. And it's like a talking piece when friends or family come over and they're like, first of all, what a nerd. But second of all, this stuff is cool, right? Like I want to talk about it. And this prompts people to talk about it. So I just love stuff like that. So I forget what your original question was, but now I don't remember what the question was. I've been on a windy. I love design. I love cards.
You answered it. You answered the question. You might not think you remembered it, but you answered it perfectly.
I answered it and then some. I get all excited.
If you came across somebody who was just maybe wanted to start off working on a set with the size and scope of the one that you completed with the 99 refractors, what kind of advice might you give them just to be aware of what's in store for them?
You got to like bite it off in pieces. I didn't look at this and count, there's 637 cards and I'm going to need this much money. I looked at it and I said, this segment of what I'm trying to do is scary because it's expensive or it's hard to find. And I'm aware of what it all is, right? And I'm keeping my eyes out, but I focused on what was attainable and said, oh, worry, it's kind of my approach to life. Like control what you can control. There's no reason to try to tackle the whole thing. What's the fun in that, right? 4 years ago, a guy listed the whole base set for whatever it was, right? Like, okay, I could have spent $4,000 or whatever it was he was asking and just attained it right away. That's not really my objective. Now I'm glad to have it and enjoy it, but it's the pursuit of it, I think, that is really what I was seeking, and I think that's probably true for most people. Like the pursuit is the fun part. Once you have it, sometimes you kind of lose the love for it, now that you've got it. And I think that's, that's part of the slippery part of it is like, you're always looking for the next thing. And so again, coming back to the sheets, it's like, I'm cognizant of that. I'm guilty of that all the time. Right. And who's to say, I don't look at this and say, geez, these two binders, they're just in my way. Like I'm going to move on from this. That could happen someday. I think again, because there's some sentimental value or whatever, like it's less likely, but it could totally happen. And that's where, to me, if it came down to it and I was like, look, like I got to get rid of all this stuff or whatever, I sort of appreciate the things that I can frame and put on my wall. Those are the things that I get to look at every single day and enjoy. I don't have to like unlock a safe or dig into a closet or whatever to pull something out to enjoy it, which is actually kind of onerous. I can just see it in the hallway, provided my wife allows me to put them somewhere I like. But I can just see it, and just like enjoy it. That is the part that I'm like really seeking. So yeah, it's kind of again, my advice would be don't overthink it. And if you want to, and like, you don't even have to overcommit. You can get into something and decide, you know what, this isn't for me. That happens all the time too. I just bought a card the other day. Again, I'm guilty as anybody of just sort of impulse buying something. I bought a card that's a set I've been, an autograph set I've been thinking about pursuing for a long time. Finally dove in, immediately realized I like had overpaid. That's why I got, the offer got accepted immediately. It went through eBay authentication and it got declined which I was surprised because I knew the condition wasn't great. And it gave me the option to accept or decline. And I'm like, I was already feeling internally a little conflicted that like I had impulse bought this and I'd overpaid for it. And again, like I would have never canceled the transaction or whatever. Like that's my own fault. But I was sort of given this option. I'm like, absolutely decline. And the guy reached out to me, afterwards and was like, hey, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm sorry. Like I was ready to go through with it. And then I realized like, this is maybe a sign that like, I don't need to dive into this right now. And it was like serendipitous. So every now and then the universe reminds us, right, to like stay focused, stay on track. And that's kind of, again, and now I remember what your last question was that I couldn't remember. It's like the 1999 set is sort of the underlying centerpiece of my collection. It's expanded to so many other avenues um, that are all really fun in their own ways. But this I really do think of as like the sort of last thing that I could let go of, because again, it has like that sentimental connection for me of, and I didn't even really talk about that, but like running around town with my brother and my dad, like I can't tell you how many packs we opened and just enjoyed hunting these things. And in the moment, I wasn't like, oh, this is the greatest family bonding ever. But I look back at that and I'm like, I just really enjoyed that. And now as a father myself, I recognize like, hey, that was my dad's way of, passing this passion on and creating a connection. And we've always been a big, baseball family and stuff. So it's just like a great way to kind of continue that forward and enjoy that.
Yeah, no doubt. And, maybe you'll be able to do that with your kids.
Exactly. That's the plan.
Last question.
Yeah.
Do you have lots of projects going on within the hobby space. Do you foresee, or do you have any plans to ever pursue something that of this size and scope again?
Not currently. Again, I'm more focused on like limiting the scope of my things. And I think that's where, I've probably got more into cards than tenfold more than into cards than I ever would have imagined I would. Right. And there's a piece of me too it's not lost on me that I'm like, you know what? I could sell a bunch of this stuff and just like go buy a car. Like maybe I should do that, or, whatever. It's like, again, it's a thing that I'm enjoying, and it's not a financial concern at this time. And I'm very fortunate to be able to enjoy the hobby in that way. At the same time, I'm like, it's unnecessary. You know what I mean? And so, I constantly kind of am at battle with, I really like this thing, but how much is really too much? And I think I'm also already kind of like overextended in terms of, I don't know if I need to be, having so many big cards or whatever. So I just try to like, again, take it day by day and just enjoy what I have. And if I'm not enjoying it, then I don't need it. And I think that is true. There is certainly a decent segment of my PC that I am aware that I'm not enjoying and I'm sort of ready to move on from. And that just takes time and work. And I just haven't made the time or put in the effort to do that. And so I'm constantly trying to remind myself of, focus on the things that you will get enjoyment out of, that have meaning, that you really like about it. And some of that stuff is the more quirky stuff. A lot of it, it's sort of like tracks back to 90s stuff. And it's sort of, the original creativity stuff where it's like the, essential credential set and the unique qualities of that type. Like I love that type of stuff. At the same time, I look at like modern cards and I'm like, it's absurd just how expensive it is to buy a box of cards these days and all that stuff. But I still can't help but look at some of the new designs, and, a lot of it I'm like, not for me. But some of it I'm like, that's actually really awesome. And like, I kind of want to check that out. So I'm still guilty. And again, I think that's just like the passion of a collector, right? And like just loving this stuff. So again, I don't think there will be anything to this scope. The 2019 autograph set that I alluded to, right? Like I have the whole base set. There's an orange refractor, these are all numbered to random numbers. And I don't actually, it's a question I would love to get an answer from Topps, is to like this Mark McGwire base. It's not a refractor or anything. It's numbered to 30. This Ronald Acuna, the exact same card, is numbered to 75. The rookies in the set are all numbered to 99. Yadier Molina is numbered to 55. Like I have no idea where these numbers came from, but they all have orange refractors that are numbered to 25. And so I'm probably, it's a 15 card set, and I probably have 8 or 9 of them in orange. And I think I have 5 or 6 of the reds, or maybe 7 of the reds now that are numbered to 5. And I have 4 of the 15 superfractors actually, and there's 2 that are floating out there that I've been trying to land. So that's pretty big in its scope. And I actually have on my Instagram, I pinned a post where I kind of spread out like sort of the different variations, like a super refractor, red refractor, orange refractor. And then I paired it with like an original 99 chrome refractor, just to kind of show over the years what Topps has done with different variations of like the same card design, which is cool. And then, they've come out with like Fortune 15 and 2025 Topps Series 1. They just re-released like a Fortune 15 set. And so I'm pursuing the base set, which will cost me $20 or $25 in total to acquire the base set. And they have all these variations. And, last year it was like the new breed set came out. And I'm like, this is slippery slope. I don't know if I need to get caught in the trap of every recycled design, trying to pursue it all in mass scale. Like, I think I'm pretty content with focusing on just that 2019 autograph set, which again has a really great checklist, which makes it enticing and fun. But I keep my eyes peeled, and I'm like kind of biding my time for when the archives set goes to the 99 design, because that'll be kind of a fun thing and an inexpensive way to like put that together. And until they've sort of really latched on to this concept of re-releasing set designs, I was, pursuing, I pulled a few of them out, but over the years, and again, it's really exploded more recently, but over the years, they've kind of released more, they've released a handful of like re-releases of the design. So 2005 Topps Rookie Cup is a very random set, and they had a subset of, they re-released the rookie cups, right? So here's Todd Helton. This is not like, here's his 99 Chrome card, his actual Chrome card that's in a Topps Archives autograph form. And then here is not his actual 99 Topps base card. It's a reprint of it from that set. And there's nothing really remarkable about this, but then they also had Chrome variations of it. And so this differs obviously from the Chrome card. As you can see, like the original Chrome was the silver. Here they kind of made a Chrome version of like the base design, that gold border. And so the Chrome versions are at a 25. And then there's a refractor version, which I don't have the Helton, but here's like a Maglio Ordonez. You can see the refractor. The light's not great for this in here, and those are numbered to 15. And then there's a 1-of-1 like gold refractor version that they've released. And a fellow Rockies collector actually has the gold refractor Todd Helton. And I've been trying for some time to pry that off of him. And it just hasn't worked out. But again, like, we collect a lot of the same stuff. In time, maybe it'll work out. And if not, like, who's to say it belongs in my collection any more than it belongs in his, right? And it's like, I'm at peace with that. And that's the fun part, is just like, I won't quit. Like, I'll continue to check in every so often, but I'm just happy to know where some of that stuff lives. So I spend a lot of my time just taking notes on where things are and who they're with, and then circling back. And like, I think a lot of times it's just, he's well aware that I'm interested in that. And at some point he might say, just as I'm culling my collection, he might say, hey, here's something I'm willing to move on from. And I know you're interested in this. Like, what do you got? And that's, I can't tell you how often that's how these things work out. So, that's kind of my approach.
Kevin, congrats on finishing that master set.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's incredible. It was
really fun. Cool. Yeah.
You can find him at Colorado Collector on Instagram. Kevin, thanks for sharing the story, and good luck to you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dave. Thanks so much.